Welcome to the replay. First, I want to say welcome to my tea family for our first weekly tea time chat. And I'm thankful that you are either here live or you're going to watch the replay later, but we're really excited to have you here. So what I wanted to do after I welcomed you all here is kind of talk a little bit for a second or two about what these weekly sessions are going to look like. First of all, I'm not anticipating that they're going to be super long, but we'll see what happens. What I want to do is I want to give you an opportunity to ask questions, make comments, and talk about tea a little bit. We get a lot of questions from people that are moving from like bagged tea or even from coffee or other beverages to tea, loose leaf tea for the very first time. So what we want to do is we want to help get them comfortable talking about tea, learning about tea, different flavors, different products. How do you make it? How do you make sure you don't overbrew it so it tastes all bitter and icky? Things like that. So that's what we're kind of going to do. Now, on some sessions, on some weeks that we come here, we're going to do some other things. We're going to do tea pairings or just maybe all questions and answers. Maybe we'll have a special guest or two at some point. Never know. It could happen. We also want to save this for sneak peeks of upcoming products or upcoming blends that we're working on and kind of share the behind the scenes with you as we figure things out and drink some tea together and chat. Now, every week that we do this, we'll be going live 6 p.m. Central Time on Sundays. We want you to join us and just put your chats or your comments or your questions in the chat boxes or in the comment boxes on the live. I've got a handy dandy super helper over there where you can't see him who's going to let me know because I can't talk to you, check my notes down here, and monitor comments. I'm just not that talented. So that's okay. Well, we want you to be a part of this. More than just Lisa talking, we want this to be a conversation between you and us where we're sitting down together and we're having some tea and we're having some conversation. And we just happen to talk about tea on Sundays. So, that being said, we're going to get started. And although this week we're going to talk primarily about the different kinds of tea and everything like that, I'm going to need tea to talk, because you can't do one without the other. So, I have my handy dandy electric tea kettle. I'm going to make a green tea today. So we're going to kind of brew it right with you. I'm going to go through all the steps and make sure you see as we brew. So the first thing you need to know is really there are two things. We all talk about tea and then we talk about herbal teas versus regular teas and black teas and white teas and green teas. And there's red teas and then there's a whole much to it. So what happens? As you can hear my kettle in the background. Well, really, there's only one tea. And then the rest are to saints. Really? I know. It's one of those things that not a lot of people realize. However, and I'm not good with Latin. It was not one of the languages that I took. So with the Camellia sinensis, yeah, I know I just slaughtered that. That's okay. That is actually the scientific name for the tea plant leaves that we use to make actual tea. And how they're processed, that determines whether it's going to be a green tea or a white tea or a black tea. If for some reason your tea blend does not have that particular plant in it, then it's actually an herbal. We're going to get more on that later, or tisane, but we'll talk a little bit later. I first want to focus on the actual teas themselves. So I brought some tea. I know that's shocking, but we're gonna try. I'm gonna be drinking Emerald Garden today, and if I've done this correct, you should be able to read that correctly. It should look perfect in the background. And so what I'm gonna do, double lid tins. We'll talk about storage tea and accessories and stuff later. All right, so we want to say thanks to everybody who's joining us as they do. The trickiest part about this, people, is the lights, which is why you see this, so that all the windows don't reflect the lights up here. So this is what I'm going to be drinking today, is some Emerald Garden. It is a green tea blend. It has green teas from China and Japan in it. Now, green tea, let me do it like this. There we go. So green tea itself is the least processed plant. So green tea is typically just rolled, steamed. Sometimes it can be fried, but then it is dried. So it is very green. It is why it is brewed at a lower temperature than a black tea. It is also why I got distracted by the tea leaves that fell on my table. It is also why you don't brew it as long as you would a black tea, and that's because it's the least processed. Now, when most people think about tea, and I forgot to bring some black tea around here, but that's okay, it's that dark black tea color. That has been gone through the process of oxidation, and that is the most processed tea. Now, here's something I'll bet you didn't know. That oxidation process is what helps bring up a higher level of caffeine, which is why there's less caffeine. Look at that. And through the magic of television. So I've got some morning Irish here so you can see what I'm talking about. So on this black tea, it's been oxidized, and I'm going to try really hard not to show it for you all without dropping it all over my floor. We'll see if I'm successful or not. I don't know. Anything's possible around here. But that has been oxidized. So what happens is it is rolled, and then it is allowed to fully ferment or oxidize. It has lots of oxygen and drying and things like that. And then it is dried completely. And so what that ends up doing is it brings out that full-bodied flavor, whereas you have more of the earthy green tea flavors for your green tea because they're less processed. So it's the same plant, it's just processed slightly differently for different amounts of time that produce the different flavors. Now, that being said, this is why we brew them at different temperatures. This is why we brew them for different lengths of time. Thankfully, I usually recommend for like a green tea like we're making today, 175 degrees to 180 degrees if you have one of these electronic ones. Another good thing is you can always let your water come to almost a simmer but not a full boil. That's a really good indication if you don't have a fancy kettle like one of these. So that is the difference. Now we also have, oh my goodness, Christmas again, ruby chai. So if you'll look, that looks, it's always like the camera versus the light, people. This is real. We are not perfect here. We don't look for perfection on that kind of stuff. We just kind of go with the real flow. Well, like on our ruby chai, let's see, even got it going the right way this time. One of the things that we get is this is considered an herbal tisane. It does not have any of the actual tea plant in it. So we want to keep that in mind. All right, here we go. Are you ready? I'm going to bring everything up to eye level so you can see it. So I have my mug. I even made it clear today. This is the basket I want to use. You can tell it's a darker color than the actual silver that it started. That's because I use it all the time. And I've got my teaspoon. You'll notice it is not a typical like household teaspoon. The proper amount of tea for 6 to 8 ounces of water is a teaspoon. Now, if you are a nerdy geek like me, that means that you want 2.5 grams exactly. And hang on one second. Can you turn that down? All right. So most people don't. So like you have a spoon. If you had just like a standard teaspoon that wasn't precise, roughly speaking, for your black teas or your green teas, it is pretty close to a rounded measured teaspoon like you would use with cooking and baking. Some of them will be more, some of them will be less. We'll talk about that in a second. So all I did is I put the tea in there. I'm going to pour the water over it until, all right, we're going to mess with the camera now so that you can see. Hopefully we'll be able to get it back. As you can see, I've just put enough to do the water. And then everybody see my notes because, like I said, we do things real here. And now, this is a green tea. This is the first brew. So, we are going to brew this. I want it extra strong today, so I'm going to make it 2 minutes. You can brew a green tea for just 1 minute. My go-to is 1 minute on the start, but I want it a little bit stronger. I just don't want the full caffeine of my favorite Serene Sunrise right now. And then you just let this sit. Now, I have people that ask, they get confused, they think they have to put the whole ounce in or anything like that. Roughly, it is that 1 teaspoon per 6 to 8 ounces of water. Now, here's why I always get nervous when people ask me, well, how many, so this is an ounce, right, in our fancy tin. How many, servings do I get in the cup? Well, roughly 10 to 11 first time brews is how I always put it. But that's because once you put your teaspoon in and you figure out your mug and everything like that, you're going to I like that a little stronger, so you're going to add a little more. Ooh, that was really powerful. I'm going to back that off and make it a little less next time. And so while you're doing that, you need to figure out how much you want for each mug. I have my travel mugs, I have more that I add in because they're 16 to 20 ounces as opposed to my 8-ounce mugs. Also, if I'm using one of my beautiful teacups that I love, those are only 5 to 6 ounces. So I'm going to use even a little bit less than I would use for an 8-ounce. So you're going to have to find that sweet spot for yourself. Now I talked about first time brews. First time brews, that's because a green tea or a black tea, when they're a higher quality, they can be brewed multiple times. So I'll tell you this if you ever see me in person at a show or if we're communicating somehow. Our green and black teas can be brewed 3 times before you have to dump the leaves. So that means that in this basket, and if I could get my handy dandy assistant, I forgot to put something in. And there's our alarm that said it's been about 1.5 minutes. So now what we want to do is immediately take this out of the water. You don't need to shake it. I need to put this on some. It's all good. And then there we go. See, handy dandy assistant's all on it. I just put it in a little ramekin or custard dish or something like this. And then I'm going to put this aside. I can brew this 2 more times. The next time, I'm going to add 1 minute to my brew time. The color of the tea, which you can see is this really light green. Yes, that's a poinsettia still. I've got some Christmas mugs out. They stay out all year round. It will be lighter with my second brew. And my third brew, it's going to be even lighter. And I'm going to add another 1 minute for that. And I don't need this to continue brewing, wasting electricity. So what I do is I will brew it. The color is lighter, but the flavor will be the same in those brews. Now, I have people that are like, Lisa, you can actually brew it 4 or 5 times, and they're happy with that. If you want to try a 4th or the 5th, typically I only go to 3 myself, but if you want to do more. Now, I will occasionally have someone that is very adamant that they only want to brew it 1 time, and that's it, no more, and that's fine too. They're just going to go through their tea faster. So if you take 1 ounce of tea from one of our tins or one of our pouches, it is roughly 10 to 11 first time brews, and then that's why I say it's 30 to 33 cups. So it's kind of up to you. I can't tell you exactly because I don't know what size cup you're going to use, and I don't know how strong or how weak you like your teas, different things like that. So we talked about brew time. Today I'm specifically giving you what I'm doing for a green tea that I now have to wait until it cools off a little bit. Now, sometimes I will cheat and I will actually add some cold water in just to cool it off faster because I don't always want to wait, but today I'll be somewhat good. I can also drink drinks that are pretty hot because I get used to trying to chug down caffeine first thing in the morning. If you know me, you know I get up at what some people would say is an unreasonable hour of between 3 and 3:30 in the morning for the most part. So I need some caffeine at that point, especially if I stay up late. So, um, what I will tell you is that not all teas, I talked about like green and black teas primarily, that teaspoon is going to be great. However, you have herbal teas or herbal tisanes as opposed to herbal teas. Um, a green and black tea is considered an herbal tea. Anything that doesn't have that tea plant in it, that is considered a tisane. It's technically an herbal tisane, although we call them all tea blends. That's just how we identify this kind of brewing. However, if you have something like a chamomile in it, chamomile is super light weight wise, and we package all our teas by weight, by a net weight. And so you're going to need more of it. So sometimes you'll hear me talk about, hey, this one you want to use about a tablespoon as opposed to a teaspoon. And it's just because we're trying to get that weight right. And that's why we're going to go through, again, welcome for those that just joined us, as we go through each week, we're going to highlight a tea, how to brew it, how many brews it can have, because some of our herbal tisanes or our herbal teas can even be brewed 3 times. Some of them, a couple of them, usually the ones with chamomile in it, only twice. So like our ruby chai, that can be done 3 times. That one is really heavy weight-wise, so you need less than a teaspoon for that one. I always tell people a level measuring teaspoon or a scant, and so that's why I want to take this and a couple times a month we'll just talk about a tea and we'll talk about how to make that particular kind of tea, because it's really easy as you step into this world to get confused. And I will tell you, tea does not have to be fussy. Tea does not have to be super complicated. I heated some water. I put it in a container like this. I dropped it in my cup. We chatted while I brewed it. I took this out, and I'm going to talk about why I take it out specifically. And now I'm just letting it cool before I can take my first sip. It doesn't have to be complicated, and it does not have to take hours or a long time to make tea. So why did I take this out? I should have left it in, right? No. If we take it out, first of all, I don't want to drink my leaves. I've had teas more than once that we've actually left the tea leaves in there, or the herbs in there, and that can be cool. But if it has any of that actual tea plant, the tea plant itself in there, the longer the tea leaves stay in that water before they're removed, the more the tannic acids will build up. That's great if you like a lot of caffeine, because the higher the level of tannic acid, the higher the level of caffeine. But it's not good for the taste buds because it becomes more and more and more bitter. And that's why we always have these people that are like, oh, I don't like tea. And we're like, no problem. Sometimes we're like, well, we have people that don't necessarily like tea itself, that like ruby chai or our maiden's blush or something else, because we know it's an herbal, so it doesn't have that tea plant in there. And I've had people try that. I've also had people like, well, I'll try it anyway, because they're at a show and we have our free sample, and then they're like always surprised it's not bitter, and they're like, did you sweeten this? And so if we ever give away a free sample, they're completely unsweetened, because we want you to taste what the tea tastes like. And then what happens is they're like, oh, this isn't bitter at all. Well, it's not overbrewed, and it's not that packaged stuff. I know in a previous post I told you all how I had to sneak my husband in because I didn't want to be seen buying the store-bought when I did the comparison. Yeah, like I can't be seen with that stuff. If it's an emergency, I still have to think about whether I'm actually going to drink it or not, because most of the time the answer is no. It's a rare thing. All right, so by taking this out, by taking the tea leaves out, it stops producing the tannic acid. And it's okay if you wait a while and then you brew another cup, you're still not going to have that tannic acid buildup. And so that's why we immediately take the tea out. But now I can leave this on my counter and I can technically leave it overnight and brew some more tea in the morning, or I could, if I was going to be away for a whole day because, I don't know, we were going to go someplace exciting overnight, I would potentially just put it in the fridge and it would be fine that way. Most of the time I just leave them on the counter and I'm going to drink more tea the next day, so it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't go bad or anything like that. The only thing you will start to notice is that it will start to dry again. And part of the reason why it's not going to go bad is, now you saw I only used this much tea, not very much, 2.5 grams for the geeks and nerds like me. But look, I don't know if you can tell, it's filled to here with tea leaves inside. And they have expanded. Let's see if I can do this. You know, it's always a matter of, if you look how big those tea leaves are, you're going to get a really good idea of how much they've expanded. And we'll talk about why I prefer the baskets and things like that in a future session. But that allows it to expand. So as long as it has enough area to really expand, it's not going to stay moist or wet or mildew overnight, or even, you know, sometimes I've actually gone a little over 24 hours before I've gotten back to it and it's still been fine. And that's because we do things like this. This is typically what I will use when I am home. But anyway, I'm going to take a sip. So good. Yummy. Herbal. I kind of got that herbal feel to it, but it doesn't have that bitter aftertaste. Yes. Okay. So we talked about the 2 or 3 brews. We talked about the different kinds of teas and how they're processed differently, but it's the same plant. And then we talked a little bit about herbals. So do we have any questions so far in the chat? I'm not seeing that he said we had any, so I'm going to just keep going. All right. So I did want to show you all something new, and I teased this a little bit. I wanted to show you on something that we've been working on. So this one's not, doesn't have any all new teas in it. This one is just our caffeine-free half-ounce sampler set. Now, this is in time for Valentine's Day. I am going to Can you tell it's the end of the day for me and I'm really tired? My mouth just doesn't want to work right. But these teas are perfect in time for Valentine's Day if you have someone that doesn't want any caffeine or can't have any caffeine. These are caffeine free. There's no caffeine in these tea blends, they're not decaffeinated. And we will talk about the difference between caffeine free and decaffeinated in a future session. It's already on the calendar in January, so we're going to definitely talk about that. But in here, we have 4 different teas, and these are a ½ ounce of each. This one is our Maiden's Blush. I almost need like another camera right there to shine in so you can see. It's a little dark in there as you look. But there's Maiden's Blush. We have Nautical Twilight, which is a ginger hibiscus tea. I mean, it does have a couple other things in there. And there you go. There's this fine line between holding them and angling them and then letting stuff drop all over the counter and floor. And since we just vacuumed, we don't really want to have to vacuum again. Now here is our Evening Mint. This is a chamomile peppermint. And do you see how much more full this tin is? Now these are each a ½ ounce by weight, but there's so much more volume to this one because chamomile is so light. So that's when I talked about like, hey, it might be a tablespoon. Peacefulness is typically a tablespoon of the tea leaves per 6 to 8 ounces of water. And then it's going to smell like Christmas again because one of our other ones that's super popular that we just restocked again is our Ruby Chai. I showed you that earlier, but you saw, now you went from this, here, don't want to mess these up. Now again, this is by weight, but look at the difference. I gotta remember, everything's backwards, there we go. In that, but they're still packed by weight, and that's why you use a lot less of the ruby chai and a lot more of the chamomile. This is also why we always typically send you a little flyer or information when we ship out something to you, or if you purchase from us, we try and put a little flyer in there. It says how to brew it multiple times, how much to use, different things like that. Hot brew, cold brew, we try and do that. But this one,
I can smell the chai.
he can smell the chai. But this little set has 4. It does not include all of our caffeine-free blends. Mocha Mint is also caffeine-free, and we are working on another one, but that's not even ready to go to the testers yet. But we had so much call for caffeine-free blends, we thought just in time for Valentine's Day, perfect for your friend or loved one, or your galentines, or your friendentines, or whatever you call it. Just a nice little gift. And it's also a great way to try 4 different teas. That's why a lot of times we do the ½ ounce sampler set, so they're good for 5 to 6 first time brews, which means many times you're getting 3 times as many, so 15 to 18 cups, so to speak. So that's a nice way to try it and see which flavors you like, because we do have quite a few. So that's something I've been teasing, and I wanted to at least kind of talk about it, go over it, talk about the 4 teas that are in it. I keep watching for questions. Remember, go ahead and put your questions or comments in the, what we will call the chat, or in the comments here. And we talked about the caffeine-free blend. And what I also want to say is, thanks for joining us. So we're going to go and we're going to stop in a couple of minutes. So I'm going to give you a chance to type any last-minute questions or anything like that. And I'm going to sip on my tea a little bit. If you watched us live and you were drinking tea, I want you to put in the chat what kind of tea you were drinking. Even if it's not one of ours, that's okay. You don't have to just drink ours, but like put in the chat what kind of tea you're drinking. Is it a green tea? Is it a certain flavor? Is it a black tea? Is it an herbal? What is it? We love to see what other people are enjoying, and right now we know that people, this time of night, a lot of people are going to the caffeine-free or the decafs. I can drink a whole bunch of caffeine. I could drink a tea made from this Morning Irish, our most highly caffeinated one, and I will tell you that I could turn around and go right to sleep just like that.
Appealing for Kim.
Ah, there you go. So Kim knows how to do it. She is drinking Appealing, which is actually what I was drinking this morning when I saw Kim, but she decaffeinated hers. Probably because she has to go to work tomorrow too, and she wants to sleep tonight. But we will actually talk about how to decaffeinate your own tea in the future too. We'll talk about that, and we'll do that, an example of that, when we talk later this month on a Sunday about caffeine-free versus decaffeinated teas. But we wanted to just kind of give everybody a shout out, and like I said, we're going to be doing this weekly. We're anticipating probably 20 to 30 minutes, not a lot of time, but just some time for us to sit back, sip some tea together, learn a little bit about tea, and have a nice little chat. So it looks like Diane said she had a cup of our Earl's Blend after shoveling out from our first snowstorm. Woo! She's up there in New England. I know where we are in Kansas, we're anticipating another snowstorm tomorrow all the way into Tuesday. Kind of crazy, but it is what it is. We just get to add the wonderful 40 to 50 mile an hour winds to it. I don't think she gets that so much where she is, but yes. Diane's like me. She can drink her caffeine and then go right to sleep. See, that's what happens. My husband and Kim apparently not so much, but they want the decaf at the end of the day, which is perfectly fine. That's why you can make it how you want it. So that being said, I am going to say go ahead and please, even if you're watching this on the replay, because I'm going to leave this up for a few days, go ahead and put in the comments. And then anybody who watches this either live or in the comment or on the replay and leaves a comment, I'm going to put your name in a drawing for a free gift next week. On next Sunday, I'm going to draw a name of everybody who either commented during the live or during the replay that comes up this week. And we'll just throw out there a little something that we've been working on. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to turn you into a tester. You might get to taste something that's not out even to our testers yet. You get to try something really raw and really new. But we're working on something to come up soon. I'm sorry. My handy dandy helper is not eligible for this. Sorry.
I'm gonna say I'm not helping. I hope it's not helping.
He likes to think he has to try it before we send it out anyway, because what we'll have done is we are going to send a free sample. It is something that he and I have sampled and we have tried and we think we have it right where it needs to be. And it's about to go out to the testers afterwards, but we'll send it out to you before even our testers get it. So, I thought, see, Kim knows it. Kim knows that he gets to test all of the teas. And then we argue, no, it needs more cardamom. No, it needs more cinnamon. No, it doesn't need any of those. We should go in a different direction. Lemon and orange is always a debate in our house. Does it need orange? Does it need lemon? Does it need vanilla? Vanilla beans are tough because it's got to really sit for a while. But yeah, so that being said, thanks for joining us for our tea time chat. We welcome you to come back with us next week on Sunday at 6 p.m. Central. And welcome Kendra. Kendra is probably celebrating her sister's birthday and she's just running in a little bit late. That's okay, Kendra. As soon as we sign off in a second, you can watch it. It'll go up on replay right away. And you did comment, though, so you're going to be eligible to be one of the first to try one of our latest teas. So that being said, I will see you all next Sunday. Thanks for joining us on our Tea Time Chat.